Welcome to the YouTube studio at the Munich Security Conference. I'm Adanna Steinacker, and I am joined by MP Arielle Kayabaga, who currently serves as a Member of Parliament of Canada. It's lovely to have you here, Arielle.
Thank you so much, Adanna, for having me.
Amazing. So I'd like to take a story behind the woman approach to the first part of our conversation, because quite frankly, you are a symbol of female empowerment and a pioneer in political leadership.
Thank you.
I find that very inspiring. So I want to know, let's briefly touch on your journey here. What were the challenges that you faced and how did you overcome it?
Well, I think for every woman in politics, especially I would say in Europe and in the North American continent, they kind of face similar challenges of, one, there aren't a lot of women in politics. If you go to Google and search women, politics, you're going to see a lot of pictures of middle-aged white men in suits. Before you can fall on a female political leader. And so that means that they're established and they've been established much longer than we have. So we face challenges in fundraising. We face challenges in establishing ourselves as serious political leaders. We face challenges of sort of being taken seriously. And those challenges differ for different women. If you're a young woman, you're facing ageism, you're facing all kinds of challenges. And when you're a woman of color in the Northern American continent context, the challenges are also very different. I would say for me, my biggest challenges were, one, to be taken seriously. I ran for the first time when I was 27 years old, was elected at 27. So one, showing that I'm a leader who believes in policy, who's been doing politics for much longer than people had known me, and as well as being the first Black woman to break that barrier was quite challenging as well.
Congratulations. I just have to mention that you are the first Black woman to be elected as a Member of Parliament to the City of London.
Absolutely. Actually, the first Black woman in politics in the City of London. And I feel like I still carry the burden of that. I still carry the barriers and they said you're breaking a glass ceiling. And when you're breaking a glass ceiling, the glass shatters and a lot of those pieces get stuck with you. But you know what? I think it's feasible. I'm also a mom. So being a mom and managing to balance both roles. And one of the biggest things I don't like is people asking, how do you manage being a mom and a politician to women? And yet men are also parents and they're never asked those questions. So I think there's still a lot of work to be done to meaningfully include women in politics.
Yes. And of course, you talked about the Google searches and the pictures that would come out. The studies do show that politics still remains a sector that has the largest gender gap in.
Absolutely.
So what you've, based on your experience, what are some of the effective strategies to close this gap, particularly in foreign and security policy?
So this is actually a really contentious subject right now, as we're seeing a rise in populism that we've never seen before, because we're meaningfully trying to include women, trying to include marginalized communities into the political space. Research has shown that it's important to include women in politics and policy making and policy decision making, so that we can ensure prosperity and peace around the world. And we could talk about peace around the world right now. It's a big issue. And when we talk about even climate insecurity, the most affected population in the world is actually women everywhere. Doesn't matter what part of the world, the women are mostly affected by all these challenges. So I think some of the ways that we can we have to be intentional about including women. We have to create policies that demand institutional restructures of how we meaningfully include women into policy decision. And we can't be shy about it. We can't be shy about it. We can't be too concerned about the rise of the populism, because we have to counter it. And we know that the most affected population is women. It's the largest population anyways. I think we should be making policies that really address that gender gap. And like, for example, in Canada, we've implemented policies that, they're called affirmative actions. And we're having to explain that to people. Like affirmative action actually means that you recognize the discrimination that has happened to this group of people,
Yeah.
and you recognize the importance of including them into the process.
So
That
equity.
equity,
Yeah.
not just diversity, but
Yeah.
equity, and being intentional about the inclusion part is really important.
Amazing. So I suppose, so tell me, what do you then hope to see in the next decade, for example, as far as the political landscape in Canada,
Yeah.
let alone globally?
Yeah.
What do you hope to see from a female, actually from a diverse, because you not only represent women in political leadership, you are a Black woman. So as far as diversity, what do you hope to see in the political landscape in Canada in the next decade?
Ooh, it's a good question. I hope to see us move from the conversation of multiculturalism being our strength, diversity being our strength, and really honing in on the inclusion part, on the equity part, and making sure that we are intentional about those parts too. I think I want to see more women talk about the economy. The economy, when we talk about inflation rising, when we talk about people who are needing access to housing, employment, childcare. These are all challenges that face women. And we're not seeing that many faces when we talk about the economy. If you want to talk about finance, we're not seeing a lot of women in that role. We currently have a finance minister who I want to give a huge shout out to, Chrystia Freeland. She's doing a great job. She's our first finance minister, who's a woman in our country, in the Canadian government. It's kind of crazy when you think about it. We're not seeing a lot of women who are included in foreign and security conversations. I want to see more defense, women taking up leadership in defense roles, in foreign affairs roles. And shout out to our Minister of Foreign Affairs as well, who's a woman. We're doing a lot of work to advance that, but it's almost like we need to go into the middle ground as well, not just the higher level, and begin to create room for people in every space. But women have a lot to contribute to the economy. They have a lot to contribute into the peace security conversations. They have a lot to contribute when it comes to foreign affairs issues. And, talk about immigration and migration. Like, a lot of us in Canada are immigrants where we've migrated from one country to another. We have a lot to contribute to those roles. And I think the more we include women into these spaces, the better conversations we can have, because we're actually hearing from lived experiences.
Yeah, and you've touched on some key things. So number one is not just the equality tick box, but the inclusivity.
Absolutely.
They say equality is inviting you getting an invitation to the
table.
table. No, actually, equality is inviting you to a party, and then inclusivity is asking you to dance.
Absolutely.
And also that it's not just at the top level, but then you look at the middle level, the lower level, and you see women in every level. So really, that is something to look forward to, right? At least you would go from explaining why we're doing this to really seeing it in action. So you're a member of the Munich Security Conference Women's Parliamentary Program, which, as far as I know, is a network that brings together young female decision makers globally to talk about foreign development, security policies.
Absolutely.
So what are some of the opportunities that you see in being part of this network, and how do you think those opportunities would transform your role in foreign policy back in Canada?
I actually want to commend the Munich Security Conference organization for creating this program. I think it's innovative, it's important, and they're getting ahead of all the things that are, the kind of challenges that we're seeing in the world, whether it's climate challenges or, proxy wars and different things that are happening. Bringing in women to have those conversations, I think, is key into the future. I think these are really good opportunities for women to be able to, sit at the table, hear the different challenges that are happening in different parts of the world. And we're policymakers, right? Like, this is what we geek on. We love waking up and talking about policy. And I came in, with a list of things that I'd love to talk about. And I'm very excited to see how many people are here, how many, those people who make the biggest decisions on security and peace. And as I'm Canadian who was born in Burundi, a war-torn country. These are issues that I've had thoughts and ideas on for so long, and always wondered where I can channel those conversations. And I think this is an opportunity for me to also, use my lived experience to inform policy.
Which
and
is very
to
powerful.
Absolutely.
Really.
And to look at the perspective of the global and not just within our own personal continents and countries, and the impacts that, something that's happening, in Europe or in the Middle East has on the North American continent, and all of those things, how they work together. So I really want to commend them for bringing those women, the 15 powerful women who are part of this program. Super honored to be a member.
Amazing. If there's anything the pandemic taught us is that you can't really have siloed conversations,
Absolutely.
right? It really has to be there has to be platforms that foster global collaboration and cooperation, and the WPP seems to be one of those.
Institutional silos cannot continue to exist, and we have to figure out a way to bridge all those bridges.
So you're also an advocate for women's health, and as a physician, I feel very very passionate about the subject matter. And I want to touch on your presence at the Women Deliver conference in Rwanda last year, where you committed about $10 million to MSI reproductive choices for a project advancing sexual and reproductive health and rights. So can you share some insights into how these projects and financial commitments really are advancing women's health and why they're important?
So this is part of our Canadian foreign policy, feminist foreign policy, and it is some of the work that we do to support, sexual health and making sure that we are trying to reach the women who don't have access to that, knowing that in our Canadian democracy, women have evolved and have more access to that. Although it's important to note that the challenges of going back are there. They're being felt right now. We have, politicians who are making this sort of like a political conversation, kind of what I said about the rise of populism, the rise of what, people are calling the extreme right. You saw what happened in the United States with Roe versus Wade, and just rolling that back and setting women back into an age where we don't have the right to access healthcare is really challenging.
Or make decisions about,
Absolutely. And I think that, this is something that we've done for a very long time. Quietly, Canadians are not braggy. We're not very braggy. We're not waving our flags everywhere when we're supporting different initiatives across the world. But I do think that now more than ever, we really need to put our foot on a pedal and make sure that we are pushing and we're supporting women across the world, even our own democracy, and making sure that women still have access to healthcare. It's a conversation that's being had in our public system right now, where women want to know, like, it's happening in the U.S. Are we safe? So what kind of safeguards do we put in place, and what are investments that we're going to to put in place to make sure that women can still have access to the healthcare and make a choice. Recently, our opposition leader did say publicly that if he was elected, if he was to be made a prime minister, he would cut foreign aid, and he thinks that it's useless. That's not part of our Canadian values. It's not part of our Western democracy's values as well. And I think that we really need to be more intentional, be loud, and protect the rights of women. And now more than ever, we need to make sure that there's more women who are involved and are actually, making these decisions. I remember when I ran because I watched a council of people discussing an issue that was not, something that didn't bother them. It was about transportation. Human right, something that everybody uses, students, women, young, old, anybody uses the, public common transportation. And yet people were saying, I don't use it. Nobody in my riding uses. So what's the point?
Wow.
I got involved because of that, right? And you think about how if so many of us were aware of the policies that are changing, that affect us directly, and the impact, maybe on that man, the impact won't be felt maybe to 3 generations, because maybe one day we'll have a granddaughter who's going to say, I wish, But on some of us, as a woman, it
immediate
affects you
impact. Yeah,
immediately. So that's
exactly.
why we need to be involved in making sure
Yeah.
that we are safeguarding these policies that have long sustained us.
And that's what politicians like you are doing.
Absolutely.
Well done. Well done.
Thank
I
you.
mean, I followed your work, and you've advocated for several critical issues that affect our everyday life, from, transportation, affordable housing, food security, women's health. It's truly impressive. And I have no doubt that you are inspiring the next generation of women, African women, Black women, but people who really want to create change and they can't find the road to get there. So thank you really for using your voice and your political platform to influence change.
I think it's important.
Yes.
I think it's important. I think it's also
I do
important
too.
to bring that representation and allow people to feel that this is your world, it's your space, and you get to decide what it's going to look like.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
That's what democracy should be about, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah. Thank you, Arielle.
No,
Thank you for your
thanks
time.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.